Hi friends, I'm here down in the corner and I have a little presentation for you to start out today's Friday freebie. And I just want to say welcome. I'm very happy to be here with you today and to hopefully have something that's going to be a little bit helpful to those of you who may be just starting out. If that's you, let me know you're here with me and tell me where you're watching from maybe today. That might be a good way for me to keep in touch with where everybody's watching from. It's always kind of fun to see the different locations from where you are watching. So please feel free to do that, and I will try to make note of it as we're here in the broadcast. Today I'm coming to you with some information about how to use my free color wheels. Now my color wheels are available to you at any time under resources on my website. That website name is RebeccaZArtist.com. If you have yet to visit my website, there is a way to sign up for my newsletter there, and there's also a way to look at some of the free resources that are there. I've got extra videos. I've got this template for my free color wheel. And I would love, love, love to share it with you and encourage you to think about using that color wheel for your own purposes. And now you might be thinking, well, what is the deal with these color wheels, and why would she think this is even a great idea? And I'm just the firmest believer in this, and so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try to persuade you that this might be a good idea for you. So why is it that you might want to try to take some time to get to know your colors? And that is because knowing your colors creates mastery. No doubt about it. If you have to mix a color, or if you have to match a color that you're seeing in a reference photo, you want to be able to do that as quickly as possible. And so if you get to know your colors, it's going to speed up your process. And when and where you speed up your process, you're not searching for those colors, your timing and your speed is going to increase. And that in watercolor is everything. For those of you who have painted for a long time, I know you'll agree with me. Do you agree with me? If you do, let me know in the comments here, because I feel like timing is just of the utmost importance. It is so imperative that we be able to do things quickly and at the right moment when that paper is just beautifully receptive to what it is that we want to do. So mastery would be one reason to think about using my color wheels to practice. Also, you know, it's really helpful to think about trying to use as few colors as possible to create your paintings. I have a bunch of colors in my palette, and I'll show you my palette here shortly, but it doesn't mean that I use them all in every painting. In fact, I try to use a very limited palette in each painting. For the most part, I might pop in some fun little spice colors here and there, but for the most part, the bulk of my paintings have a pretty limited palette where I'm using similar mother colors. And the term that I use for mother colors is the colors that are used to mix and formulate most of the colors in the painting. So a limited palette is a great idea because it creates harmony. Harmony is a really, really important principle in all of our paintings for all of us as artists. And so I would encourage you to think about trying to use a limited palette and doing so creatively. So this exercise with my color wheel really helps you to get familiar with what your colors can do and what the various shades of color you can create might be from that limited palette. So I've got a quiz for you. It's not hard. Just bear with me and think about your personal answers to these questions. Oops, wrong one. Pick a color from your palette and answer these questions. Do you know the name of that color? Because naming a color on your palette is sometimes the hardest thing we have to do. There's all these crazy names. There's quinacridone, anthraquinone, phthalocyanine, all of these crazy color names attached to the colors in our palette, but it's important that we know them. And the reason being is that if we like it, we want to replicate it and continue to use it. If we don't like it, we want to know which colors, when we put them on the paper, always kind of make us cringe. And there are colors like that for some of us that we might want to eliminate from our palette because we just have a visceral reaction to them that isn't positive. How strong is the color, that one color that you've chosen? Do you know how strong it is? Some colors are very powerful, like the phthalo colors. The phthalo colors can just have strength that is just like immeasurable sometimes. Other colors are wimpier. And if you've got a color that's maybe a madder or a lake, or perhaps a color that is like a ultramarine violet, I find that to be a little bit of a wimpy color in a good way. But nonetheless, it's nice to know the strength of your colors. And so if you can't tell me the strength of the different colors on your palette, that's maybe telling me something that you might want to pay attention to. You need to know if that color moves easily in water. Some colors will stay where you put them, even if you're painting on an incline. Other colors will creep around whether or not you're painting on an incline. And it's good to know that attribute of that color. So I would encourage you, if you don't know that, this would be one more argument for spending some time playing with color. Is it a bossy color in mixes, or is it wimpy? Does it sort of let other colors take over? Some colors take over, like yellow ochre. If you put it in a mix, it will be bossy and it will push other colors aside. Other colors will mix and mingle and kind of play nicely. So it might be nice if you were to play with the colors to find this out about the colors that you have in your palette. Will it create a clean or bright color mix? Some colors have a more pure chroma. They're not as neutralized, inherently neutralized. The phthalo colors tend to be quite bright, high chroma pigments, whereas, say, a raw sienna or a yellow ochre might create a little bit more neutralized mixes. And if you don't know this about your colors, again, a whole nother argument for spending more time with a brush in your hand and just playing around. Let's see. If you use it in a mix, does it create a more neutralized color? That would be good to know. And you might want to be able to look at the colors on your palette and say, just kind of predict, will that create a neutralized color? Well, playing with these color wheels, playing with your palette will help you with all of this. Another super important attribute in your colors is to know whether or not it's opaque or whether it is transparent. Now, the difference is that one will cover and one will blend, will visually blend with the layer beneath it. So it's, again, another reason for you to know about your colors and to play around with the color wheel. So if you're not sure that you could answer these questions about every color on your palette, I guess it's time for you to make a change and to really do a little homework And this is a way you can do that. And it doesn't have to be a drudge. It can be kind of fun, actually. You're only going to learn about your colors if you use them. So you might be saying, I love color. I want to use as many colors as I can. But honestly, the whole concept of the harmonious, limited palette is so valuable, and you just have to trust me on this, that it's going to help you if you do use fewer colors. So you can still love color and use a limited palette. So keep this in mind. When colors have similar foundations, the paintings that result will always have a sense of holding together and have harmony throughout them. It's going to happen. You're going to create an environment where things fit together, things feel harmonious. And limiting your palette will also teach you how these colors mix and perform together. And you might be surprised that the color range you're capable of creating is not as limited as you might think. It's really not. So, how to use my color wheels? What do you do? First of all, you'll need to pick a triad of colors. And that triad can be any 3 colors that you might want to choose. Usually it's a form of red, a form of yellow, and a form of blue that I would suggest. So that those 3 create a triad. You can go with a red, yellow, blue of any of the colors on your palette. You can take and instead of a red, use a brown, a yellow, and a blue. Say like a red oxide or a burnt sienna. That could be a reasonable substitute for a red. You could take a red, a yellow, and instead of a blue, use a violet, maybe a blue violet. Or instead of a red, you could use maybe a red violet, a yellow, and a blue. You can see also that, let's say instead of a red, you use more of a red orange, yellow, and blue. Or you might, instead of a yellow, use a yellow orange with a red and a blue. And likewise, instead of one of these other colors, you might substitute a green for, say, a blue or a yellow, depending on where that green leans. So think about picking a triad. That's your first step, okay? And then you can download the template that I'm going to put a link to in the comments below. And you can always find this same template under resources on my website, or you can create your own if you decide that you'd rather just wing it on your own. One thing to keep in mind is I would use good watercolor paper for this. And the reason being is that you want to see how your paints behave under their normal and most optimal conditions. I think that it is helpful to have that good paper as a part of this process. So I wouldn't skimp on that. And then in each and every wedge of the pie shapes that I show you, I would encourage you to try to create a gradation of value, meaning that you go from light to dark within that wedge, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is what the template looks like. It's a pie with wedges, and there are little, let's see if I can enlarge this here for you. I guess I can't. There are little tags that will be blank for red, yellow, and blue, and you can inside those little compartments you can put in your color names, and then you can go about filling in the colors with the colors from your palette, and they end up being quite pretty. And once you get a whole pile of them, you're gonna see how many beautiful colors you're capable of making with just 3 colors. So I hope that you'll think about, if you're enjoying these videos and if you're enjoying the free lessons that you're getting, I hope you'll just take a moment and go back to or look for my Facebook page at Rebecca Z Artist and make sure you've liked it. What that allows me to do is communicate with you as a business or as a Facebook page. I cannot tag you, I cannot message you or any of those things without your having liked my page. So that's a big reason for me to ask you to do that, and I promise to, not hound you or anything. So with that in mind, I'm going to sort of close out this presentation, and let's see if I can do that. There we go, and there, here I am. So what I want to do is show you my tabletop now, and then I'll just sort of show you real quickly how to fill in some of the wedges on the color wheel. If you have any questions about anything so far, please feel free to write them out and let me know. First of all, I'm just going to show you again these color wheels. This is the template and what it looks like. This is how it will print out for you. And you can fill in the blanks with the name of your color. Now you'll see what I've also done is I have taken and I've written the word triad and just kind of played with the colors within this triad to create a little bit of a colorful word there. And I have filled in with the color, underneath the name of the color, so you kind of get an idea of which color is which. I put the brand for the color up in the corner here, and then I also wrote out the names of the colors over here. So this is just kind of how my personal notes to self, and I had a good time. I had a good time doing these. I really like to play with color and just kind of play with my paints. Now you'll see that in this pie, I have a lighter version of the color going to almost the purest color that I can get on the outside, strongest color on the outside, and then moving in and getting lighter as it goes toward the center. And that's what I'm going to encourage you to do also, to create that gradation of color. And you'll see that I've done this for a number of colors in my palette. And I just never seem to get enough of it, honestly. I love to play around with this. I'm kind of a nerd that way. So here's my palette. It changes, and so I am prone to sort of write what the names of the current colors in my palette are on the cover, and that's something you could think about doing as well. I've got a template sort of drawn out here, and what I'd like to just demonstrate for you today is how you could think about maybe creating your own template. So when I get started, usually I just kind of wet my colors with a spray bottle. I'll try to bring it into the picture here completely so that you can see it a little bit better. And so I wet them. I kind of start with a clean palette. That's my personal preference, but I think in this instance, it's important to just have pure colors and get an opportunity to see what these colors can do when they're not impacted by any sort of mud that might be in your palette from previous outings. So I just keep Kleenex or paper towel nearby so that I can think about cleaning it out. Always want to have some Kleenex or paper towel at the ready. And then what I would do in this instance is I would pick your 3 colors. For today's purposes, I think I'm going to be using a color, a very beautiful blue color called Antwerp Blue. That's going to be my blue color. And I'm just going to start by, under the blue, just kind of filling that in with a little bit of Antwerp Blue so that I kind of know what that color is going to look like. Now, for my yellow, let's see, what color will I use? I think for this one, I might use, let's see, maybe I will use New Gamboge, because it's a yellow that I like a lot. It's a warm yellow. And so I'm going to just get a puddle of it ready here. And I'll just quickly fill some of this in where the yellow is. So that will be New Gamboge. Both of these are Winsor Newton colors. And then for my red, I think today what I will use is Permanent Rose Madder here. And I believe this is a Daniel Smith color. This is more of a pinky red. And it's got madder in the title of it. And I think as a rule, those colors with madder or lake in them tend to be a little bit less bossy. It's just been my experience. So I'm going to use this one here. And I'm going to come here and I'm just going to quickly put that red in. You can see right away that it's a very pink red and maybe a little cool red. So that's how I would start. And to create a gradation of color, this is what I would suggest. I would think about getting a nice strong puddle of color, quite strong, sort of the consistency of maybe half and half or cream. And then taking just a wet, clean brush and wetting this whole wedge that might be right underneath our label for blue. And I would go in as strong as I can at the top. Just really, really strong. Now I'm working on a slight incline and look what's happening. Look what's happening. I can tell that this Antwerp blue moves easily. It's an easy mover. It's not staying put. It's creeping. And I've already learned something about my color just from that little bit in this exercise. So I'm going to really try to beef up this color and get it as dark as I can up here at this end. Notice I'm not going all the way down. I'm just starting at the edge here. Now, once I feel like I've gotten that very dark, I'm going to rinse my brush and I'm going to just bring it in here and I'm just going to kind of try to move this puddle without picking up my brush. I'm just going to kind of move this puddle all the way down. Okay. Now it's getting very wet and I can see that I've got kind of I guess a little bubble of water. I would call that a bead of water down here at the base. And what I can do is I can just dab my brush, get the liquid out of it, and I can use this as a sponge to just kind of pick up the extra water that might be there. I want to create a gradation of color where it's darkest at the edge and lightest in the center. Now you can see that I kind of went over the line here, and I'm not going to worry about that so much. I'm going to take my Kleenex and I'm just going to dab that color up. While it's wet, I can just dab it. And there it goes. So this might be the way to create that really strong gradation of color. Now, if I felt like I wanted to make it even darker at the top, I could go right from my well and I could just lay in some very juicy dark pigment here and let the water on the paper, I can see I'm going back and forth, I'm not lifting, let the water on the paper dilute it as we go down toward the center. And it's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter because my brush is getting more and more exhausted. And by doing this, I can create that gradation. I've made it as dark as I can at the top, and it's as lighter at the middle. If it's not light enough in the middle, you can use your brush as a sponge by cleaning it out in your water, dabbing it on a a paper towel, I can see it's still got paint in it. So I'm going to dab it here, and I can just come in here and I can lift, and I can really exaggerate the variation of color if I want to by just using my brush as a sponge. So if you were to do that all around and fill in all of your colors, you would end up with a beautiful example of a color wheel that would end up being something like this. But not all of these wedges are going to be pure colors. Some of them are going to be mixtures of two colors. And so what I do in that instance is I take and let's say I wanted to do a red violet. Now I wouldn't do it in an adjacent wedge at this point, because if they came together, there might become a bleed that would result from the communication of the two wedges. So I would maybe skip and let this one dry while I worked on maybe a red violet. So how might I do a red violet? Well, I want to create a mix that is stronger, leaning more towards the red than the blue. And so it's going to be born of these two colors. So in this instance, I'm going to get a lot of red. And I'm just going to try to get a really, really dark version of this color. But since it's not a real dark color inherently, it's going to maybe be a little bit more difficult. I'm already realizing that I can't really get too dark a mix of this, even when I go straight from the well to my palette. It's still kind of a middle to light value color. So what I'm going to do is start out again like we did before with just water. There's a little bit of color in here so you can kind of see where my water is. And I'm going to try to go as strong as I can, and this time I think I might just go right from the well up here and just try to make this as strong as I can, first with the red. All right. So I've got my red established. So now I'm going to come in there with some blue. And I think because I don't want this to overpower that red, I think I'm going to mix the two together. And then add it to the red. Because I don't want it to be too blue. And look how quickly this becomes quite blue in terms of the violet. It's bluer than I would have expected. And so that's telling me that my red in relation to my blue is not as strong. I'm going to need to add more red to this in order to keep it a red violet. So I'm going to punch up the red, starting where I want it to be darkest. And I think I'm going to lift out a little bit of the blue down here and go in with more red again, because I really want this to read as a red violet. But boy, am I having to work at it. That Antwerp is a strong color. So here I am just continuing to beef it up, but I've kind of lost my gradation. So now I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to lift a little bit. This is when I lift, I go from the bucket, I clean, I tap, and I lift. I'm not bringing more and more and more water to that puddle, because more water is just going to give me less and less control and more dilution, and I don't necessarily want more and more dilution. So I'm going to just continue to beef that color up with a little bit more red and a little more strength back here, because I really want to create that contrast. And I'll lift a little bit more down here so that I've got a light feeling color down here. Even lighter maybe. Okay, and I might just leave it at that. I've gotten a nice gradation of color, and it's in the red violet family. And so that's what I would do. I would just continue to work around and know that each color is going to behave a little bit differently when it pairs with its neighbor. And there will be blue violet and red violet, red orange, more yellowy orange, and a yellow green and a blue green variation of all of these various triads. So look to try to create these variations of hue, and look to try to create some variation of value from dark to light, and you'll get a chance to see, just what those colors do and how strong are they. You may find that certain brands of color also might be more to your liking. For example, I like the yellow ochre of Winsor Newton a lot. I like it better than different brands. I do not care for Cheap Joe's Raw Sienna. It's just a personal preference on my part. I really like Winsor Newton's burnt sienna because it leans a little bit more to the warm orange side of that color. And so you yourself will also realize that, you might have personal preferences when it comes to brands. There's no real regulation of what a color exactly is when they give it that name. Burnt sienna can vary, and all colors really can vary depending on the manufacturer. So play with your colors. Have a good time with downloading this template, and let me know if this is a helpful exercise for you. I certainly am always trying to help you to be the best artist that you can be. That's my goal. And it's with that I offer you these Friday freebies. I'm going to say goodnight. I'm off to cook dinner for some friends, and I'm looking so forward to just the opportunity to maybe be a little bit social. And I hope that you can find something that's going to bring you joy this weekend as well. Delane, thanks for joining me. It's nice to see your comment there. Cheryl, I'm so glad that you're here watching from North Myrtle Beach. It's great. And Virginia, that's wonderful to have you with us too. I think you're all the way down in Florida, so we're watching from all over this evening. And if you're watching the recorded version of this, just know that you can find this template on my website under resources. And so just click around until you find it, and then you can download it. And there you'll find a whole list of arguments for why you might want to do that. Betsy, you're so welcome. Thanks for tuning in and for commenting. It's always nice to hear from you. And thanks everyone for joining me. Have a great weekend. Bye.